this is what we've been waiting for, is to get this opportunity to play for this state championship. And now we're here. But he's had a couple big runs this season for us. But it was a great job at the point of attack of our offensive line.
Franchini, play fake, looking, going deep. Tyson's open, pitch and catch, touchdown.
Right now, it's whatever it takes.
This is the Chuck Smith Show on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Now, here's Coach Smith and your host, Nick Kosko.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Chuck Smith Show right here on Cape Atlantic Live. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, and with me, as he is every week, is Mainland head coach Chuck Smith. Coach, you guys coming off a tough loss to Millville on Friday night, rematch of last year's sectional final, and again, another rematch of the state semifinal just a couple of years ago. 40-7, you guys held a 7-6 halftime lead. Talk me through it. It was a back and forth affair a little bit, a lot more defense in the first two quarters, and all of a sudden, that's why he's going to Alabama. We talked about him last week. Lazier Brooks from Millville. He decided to go off on offense and defense in that second half.
Yeah, great seeing Nick. We knew Millville would be ready for us, having beaten them pretty decisively on their home field last year for the sectional championship. Tough battle the year before that in the state semifinal. And we knew they'd be up for it. And the kids were prepared. We were excited to go out there to Millville. It's a great place to play. One of my favorite places to play as a kid when I played for Mainland. And, it was a great game in the first half. We escaped a couple daggers, with Brooks. It was really the Brooks show almost the whole game. That's not to take anything away from the rest of their team. But first half, they went down, scored. Brooks ran one in for a touchdown. And we answered. We drove the ball 85 yards down the field and scored to take a 7-6 lead. Our defense battled in that second quarter, especially. They had the ball deep in our red zone, and we were able to pick a ball off before halftime. And we had a lot of momentum and a lot of excitement at halftime. And then, we came out in the second half, and we had a great kickoff return. We got a first down. We were on their side of the field. And then Brooks again comes in, makes a great defensive play, stripping one of our players to the ball, and returns it for a touchdown. That kind of was a big momentum shifter in the game. And then their defensive corner, Chuck Core, did a great job with some of his adjustments, really stopped what we were doing effectively on offense. And, they just kind of started getting unwind a little bit. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to call plays at Millville when you got number one out there, he made some spectacular catches. And he's just at a whole different level. I said this before, I think he is the best skill position player I've ever seen in all the years I've coached down this area at all. I mean, by far. I mean, he possesses just such great football awareness, watching him on both sides of the ball. And like I said last week, I can't believe he got that much better. He was elite to begin with, and he's that much better. And watch him just run with the football and his breaks on defense, and he blocks and so forth. And he did it all. He had a couple touchdown passes. He caught one. He ran a fumble back for a touchdown. He was a difference maker in the ball game. I don't know. We win the game if he's not there. But he was a big reason for that outcome the other night. We have to bounce back now. It was a big game. You learn from your mistakes, and there was a lot we could learn from after watching the tape. And the thing about kids more than coaches is they forget about a lot quicker than the coaches do. I think by the time we were done on Saturday, everybody was ready to move on to Cherokee, and that's where we are.
Yeah, Cherokee coming up on Friday, guys. Return home to the Corral at 6 p.m. Of course, catch that game right here on Cape Atlantic Live. You mentioned Brooks. I mean, he made SportsCenter top 10 that night. Yeah. Number 2 play. That blew up. Hat tip to Kevin Minnick of NJ.com. He caught that video right near the end zone, and Brooks even said, "I didn't even know I could jump that high." And it's like, well, if you could do that now, it's like you could probably do anything. So, you just to go back to that 7-6 halftime lead, you guys responded right away. You made some stops, had some lucky breaks with some plays called back, and then the second half happens. I know he took over. What really changed in that second half, considering you guys? Not that you had Millville's number since last year, but it seems like you matched up quite well with them, aside from one guy who's going to be a mismatch for any team that plays against him. What changed in that second half where the momentum kind of stopped, and all of a sudden you guys just were in a big hole going into that fourth quarter, or in the fourth quarter, I should say.
Yeah, I think really it was two things. Really, I think the major one was their defense outplayed our offense in the second half. I mean, we were going 3 and outs and 4 downs and giving the ball back to them. We really didn't have the turnovers. It was just that one fumble. That was it. But what was happening was their defense made great adjustments, stuffed us, and then they were making a couple plays on offense all of a sudden. Where we were able to stop them before. And it's nothing against our kids. I mean, we were in position on a couple of those plays when we watched the film. Our players are there, and Brooks just makes outstanding offensive individual plays. On catches, one for a first down, a fade on a touchdown, and then an adjustment ball, and the kids are right there in position. He's just that elite of a football player. And I think that was the difference. I think it was really their defense shutting us down, and Brooks making plays.
When you look at now this team, your team in particular, because it's not, again, it's every year it's different. You guys were undefeated last year. You had won the first 2 games this year. So, it's a 16-game winning streak. So if you look at that, that's like the New England Patriots back in 2007. Like, you guys did not lose a game until this one. So especially for the guys that were integral parts to your championship team last year, I like that you just said that the kids bounce back faster than the coaches. As coaches, you're going to constantly evaluate the film, and you're going to fret over it because maybe you're 3-4 plays away from making that an entirely different ball game. Who really knows? And I think it's the what if factor. How do the kids erase that from memory, considering, in layman's terms, the wheels fell off in the fourth quarter, but then they have to turn around and play another tough team in Cherokee, which was a Group 5 sectional champion last year.
Yeah. I think, after you watch the film and, you're sitting there in the team room, and there's a lot of, obviously, constructive criticism going on in there. I think the kids absorb it, learn from it, and they're able to flush it right out. And that's kind of what we do with anything that bad that happens with our team. It's part of our mindset training that we do. We flush it out, move on to the next thing. Or we say, hey, you know what? Good. Glad it happened because we need to learn from it. And, this is, even though we have a lot of guys that are returning that have experience, even those guys that have experience, they're thrust into a different role this year. So I think there's still that adjustment period of them being the guy now too. Now they're seeing, what does this really take to be that elite of a level, what you strive to be? Can you attain that? I don't know. That's why you play the game. You never know what's going to happen. So I think the kids, learned from it, watching the film, listened to the coaches, and I think now, we turn the page and, you wash that away and it's over with. And now you have a fresh start and try to get back on track this week. I think that's a good thing about sports. There's always another game to get at. If you have a bump in the road, there's another game for redemption, to bring yourself back together and see where you are. And this is a big test for us this week, obviously, because Cherokee they remind me a lot of Millville and Mainland and, a Shawnee, a school that is very rich in the tradition of football. You've had a lot of championship seasons, a lot of success, a lot of big players that went on to play at a different level. And, there may have been some little dips and valleys and stuff like that, but there's been more peaks than that. And, I think just a few years ago, they had 1 win on their schedule. And, now all of a sudden last year, they beat a very good Washington Township team in the Group 5 sectional final, and watching them on tape, and I watched them against the Prep, and I watched all their games this season. They're a very good football team. I think the thing that stands out about them is you can see they're well coached and they listen to what they do. They play their positions well. You can tell just by their stance, their alignments, their read steps, what they do. You can tell when a team is very well coached. And these guys do it. And I think that sometimes prevails over more talented teams because there's structure, and they're put into a position to be successful. And it's just a matter of what happens on the field. And Cherokee is that type of program, they're one of the bigger schools in South Jersey. They have a lot of kids in the program. And I don't know what they do up there in that Marlton area, but it seems like every kid is gigantic,
Oh my God.
All those schools up there, the Indian schools and, all those schools, they just seem to have one big kid after another kid. Their linemen are all, 6'4" to 6'6" and 275, 285, and down here in this part of South Jersey, it just seems like we might get one of those guys occasionally, but our guys are all like, 6'2", 6'3", 250, But they're a big team, and they have a nice young quarterback, sophomore, who spins the ball well, nice athlete. Their running back, he's a fire hydrant with a lot of burst up the middle, a tough runner.
Yeah,
really impressed with him, the way he runs the football. They have a very good active free safety, number 5, who's a good athlete. I don't think I've seen him drop a punt yet. He goes after anything on the football field, punt return wise, and they have a very good wide receiver.
Yeah,
and that's not to take anything away from their offense and defensive lines, because they're very big and they get after it. And we're going to have our hands full come Friday night.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this game plays out, because you just mentioned before how this team is, or the program, I should say, is just always in contention. I go back to even my high school days when I was with EHT, and right before I got into high school, they made the sectional final back then. Ran undefeated all year, ran into Cherokee. My freshman year, sectional semifinals, ran into Cherokee. Heck, my sophomore year, consolation game, ran into Cherokee. They're always lingering from that West Jersey area, and they're always going to match up against these Atlantic and Cape May County teams should they meet up. And being a Group 5 school, they pretty much were, I would argue, one of the best teams in Group 5 throughout the entire state last year. They just happened to run into Toms River North, and they might have to do that again, because Toms River North looks like another team that's going to win, its third straight state title here in 2024. When you were looking at the film, and I'm curious how you break it down, so you have to go from Millville, which, as you've mentioned a handful of times dating back to last year as well, when you look at their offensive line and their defensive line, those are big dudes. Millville's got some big dudes, really. Some freak athletes, and of course, freak athletes like Lazier Brooks, or even the new quarterback Robbie O'Connor. Then you look at Cherokee. You mentioned Murad Canfield already. Their running back, who's very talented. The sophomore quarterback Cooper Birdie. I mean, he's a lefty, so that might be a different dynamic for you guys as well. I mentioned Bry Fogel, their punt returner, who's just kind of all over the field as well. What really sticks out about this team compared to a great team like Millville, considering this team is bigger in enrollment and size, but also, you just mentioned, probably the biggest factor is their linemen on on both sides of the football, where they're about all 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, they're very good up front on both sides of the football. They can push people around. We're going to really have to battle that and scheme that this week. I think the difference between them and Millville is Millville has a lot of athleticism on their team, and Cherokee is more of a structured, disciplined football team. And I'll take that any day. I mean, it's nice to have athletes, don't get me wrong, but it's really nice to have the disciplined structure of a program, because I think that carries you forever. And that's proof in the pudding is Cherokee. But they have it all across. I mean, they have some very good, talented receivers, running back, defensive backs, and then you put them behind, a very big and strong and well-coached defense and offensive lines. And you have yourself a pretty good football program. And not to mention they have a good kicker also. It always seems like Cherokee has a kicker. Every time I've seen them on film, and this is the first time I think Mainland has played them since 1980.
Wow.
And I think, every time I've ever seen them on film against somebody that was a common opponent, I'm always like, how do these guys have another kicker? Like every year they have another kicker, and they have one again. I think he hit like a 40-something yard field goal against Lenape while I was watching the film. But yeah, we're excited to play them. You always want to play good teams. And I think it's going to be a great, atmosphere at the Mustang Corral on Friday night. It's neat because I guess you've played at Cherokee too.
Yeah.
And it's an intimidating place to play when you're down that bowl. Because when I was the head coach at Oakcrest, my first year, we went to the sectional finals against them, and we lost to them. But I remember it seemed like they had 200 kids on the football team coming down the walkway, coming down all the way up top. They wait till you're down in the bowl where you look very tiny, and then they come in from the top walking down, in all their orange uniform and stuff. But yeah, we're looking forward to it because it's going to be, it's a big game for both teams. We're both sitting at 2-1. We're both coming off a division loss. Big, power points for the playoffs. And nobody wants to ever lose 2 in a row. You expect to maybe have a bump here and there in the road in your schedule, especially the schedule both of our teams have, being in that American division. A lot of great football teams in there. But this is a big game for both teams because you want to come out. Somebody's coming out 3-1. somebody's going to be 2-2 after this,
Yeah.
and hopefully the green and white team's 3-1.
It's funny you mentioned the home stadium for Cherokee out there, and I haven't been there, I believe, twice in my life. Once as a player, once as my eighth grade self before I got into high school when watching that sectional final. It is very intimidating. So I can only imagine how thrilled you guys are to have this, especially since it's a division game, to have it at the Corral. You're at home, you're more comfortable, but you're not kidding. For those who haven't seen Cherokee before, the field is like down in like you say in a bowl, because it's not a structured stadium. It's just giant bleachers on the home side, moderate bleachers on the away side, but the hill just dips, and they just sit and they said, let's just build a field right here. we can put a field right here and let them walk down. Like you said, it's like they're coming down from a tower.
Yeah.
And they're the intimidating factor while you guys are just sitting there waiting. But like you said, it's probably like 150 kids, just all guys in orange coming down. You're like, oh, you already lost the game right there.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive what they do with that. It's a neat atmosphere. It really is. I don't know of any other place that's really like that around here, or that I've ever been to.
Yeah.
As a high school football coach.
Yeah. So when you look at this game now at home, and I do find it funny because we've talked about this on and off the air about the gauntlet of this schedule. Your quote unquote gauntlet. Yeah, all division games. Millville. You have Cherokee this week. You guys are at the Prep next week. Classic Cape Atlantic foe, but now a division game, and obviously they're playing at a really high level. Cherokee just lost to the Prep last week, 21-7. I think it was at Cherokee, so the Prep went in there and took care of business. One, I got to imagine, we'll talk more about the Prep next week when you guys play them, but one, I got to imagine that's the talent of the Hermits this year. But also, what did you get away from that film, considering, again, you have to focus on Cherokee this week, but you're simultaneously, I guess, maybe putting a lot of things together because you have to play both those teams over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're both like very similar in some regards. Big, strong, powerful football teams. They like to pound the football. I think the game, usually some game tapes are like 140, 150 some clips. I think that one was like right around 100. So it was a quick game because of the running the football. Both teams have good running backs, big offensive lines. They're both big up front on the defensive line. So they're very similar in that regard. Cherokee scored. Really, they were shut out offensively. Cherokee scored on a block punt, and recovered it for a touchdown. But I was impressed by the size of these high school kids.
Oh my God, yeah.
You're just like, wow. They both teams seem to have them, and Prep is at another size level than Cherokee. But it was a good football game. You could tell both teams were very well coached. It's neat as a coach when you're watching the various positions on the field, and you're just watching how their stances and their reads and stuff like that, and how they react, and you can just tell that they have good football staffs there and good position coaches coaching the kids up. And it's fun. When you play these kind of teams, it really comes down to like schematics a lot of times too. It becomes a chess match between the coaches because the other side has a great staff. Both teams can be very similar and very even on the football field. And then it comes down to your schemes and what you're trying to do and who can make the play or not. So it adds another, element to the game altogether, behind the scenes, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun having those kind of challenges.
Chuck Smith Show right here on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Coach, I'll leave you here with this one as we approach game day on Friday, 6 p.m., of course, at the Corral. Catch it right here on Cape Atlantic Live. What's going on in terms of celebration? I hear we have a lot more alumni coming back on this Friday. Yeah. So, again, big game atmosphere against a Group 5 school, big division game. What's going on in terms of the Mainland alum? What can they expect on Friday?
It's really cool. For the first time ever, we're doing a Ring of Honor ceremony. Where we're starting, we don't retire jerseys or anything like that, but it's really kind of like our own football hall of fame, so to say, recognizing players from Mainland's past, the storied history of Mainland has had in 62 years now. So we're honoring a bunch of players. They're all coming back. So we have our first guy is George Landis. He was the first real star of Mainland, great athlete, graduated 1967 from the school, went on to play at Penn State University, started cornerback for them, played in the Orange Bowls back then for Joe Paterno, wound up being the head coach at Mainland in 1977. He was also the head coach at Bloomsburg University, and he's coming back from Harrisburg with his family. We have Greg Buttle, who played in the early 70s for Mainland, played tight end and linebacker, and he went on to play at Penn State also, was a starting linebacker for them, All-American linebacker actually. played a bunch of bowl games. He was Penn State's all-time leading tackler till maybe like 10 years ago. And he went on to be drafted by New York Jets, played 9 seasons in the NFL for Jets. He was the AFC Rookie of the Year, and he was also selected to a Pro Bowl. And then we have the last 2 guys from Mainland to play against Cherokee, Calvin Robinson and Doug Strang. They were members of Mainland's first sectional football championship team in 1980 when we won Group 3. We beat Cherokee in the first round. I was a freshman that year, and those guys were seniors. And then we beat Overbrook. They were both upsets on the road en route to the first championship. But Calvin was South Jersey's all-time leading rusher till Kevin Sinclair in the mid-1990s, and is still Mainland's all-time leading rushing leader with over 4,000 yards. Great man, always in touch, and I think he's coming from North Carolina or something like that. Greg Buttle's coming down from Long Island for this event. Doug Strang has been one of our best supporting alumni we've had since I've been the head coach at Mainland. He was the man. When I was in high school, Doug Strang was the dude, great guy. He was an academic All-American in high school, academic All-American in college. He was a first-team All-State guy, same as Calvin was, in high school. Doug also went to Penn State. We had a Penn State kind of railroad going on there for a while, and became the starting quarterback, played on the 1982 championship team that upset Georgia with Herschel Walker in the Sugar Bowl, I believe it was. He was the quarterback there, team captain, MVP of the Aloha Bowl, signed a free agent contract, I believe, with the New England Patriots. He's coming back from Pennsylvania. And then we have, of course, Bob Coffey, who was the head coach at Mainland for 30 years, 187 victories, I think, 5 sectional titles in 7 appearances, and I think 9 Cape Atlantic League titles. So they're all coming back. Bob only lives across the street, though. Everybody else is traveling a distance.
They're all coming in with come back.
Yeah, they're all coming in with their entourages, and we're going to have preferred seating down the end zone for these people. It's going to be a very nice night for them and for the Mainland community. I know a lot of people are coming to the game who have graduated, went to school with those guys, and hadn't seen them in a long, long time. At halftime, we're going to have a ceremony, and we'll unveil the banner. We'll have their number and their name and the years they played at Mainland, their high school number, and the years they played at Mainland. They'll be in the end zone forever. We're going to have it Friday night. It'll be up on the press box up above where you are, facing the crowd so they can all see it. But there'll be a little ceremony at halftime and a video kind of montage, a short video montage on our brand new video scoreboard commemorating each of the inductees. So it's going to be a really a great night at the Corral. Yeah,
it's going to be really awesome. I can't wait to see it. Just all the history that comes from. And I know you guys have bounced between a Group 3 and Group 4 school. That's generally a bigger high school, but just it's almost like it's still a small town feel between Linwood, Summers Point, and Northfield to see all the history come back. And actually, real quick, because you brought him up, and I'm glad he's going to be in the Ring of Honor come Friday night. Bob Coffey, just what has he meant to you in your coaching career? Again, he's when people think of Mainland football for about 3 decades, they're like, oh yeah, it's Bob Coffey. Mainland football, yeah, Bob Coffey, yeah. That's they're almost synonymous. What's he meant to you, and like what have your conversations been like just between coaches and I guess just as individuals?
Yeah, well, Bob hired me. That was my first job coming out of college. Hired me as a freshman football coach way back in 1989. And I think he just completed his 3rd season as head coach. I spent 21 years as assistant with him. The last, I think, 10, 12 years as the offensive coordinator with him, where we won a couple of titles there. It was neat because I think the one thing I learned from Bob was he allowed his coaches to coach. Put a lot of trust in him. He had a hand on you, a guiding hand, but he allowed his coaches to coach. And I like that because it gave me the freedom to do kind of what I needed to do. Nobody ever stepped out of bounds on him or did what they wanted, but you did what you needed to do. And I liked it when I became the offensive coordinator because he pretty much let me run the show. He just put faith in me and my abilities, and it helped me grow as a coach overall. I was able to do, when I wanted to change to the spread, he was all for it. And we changed to the spread from being old school wing tee to the spread. And then kind of like, was there a little bit, when I left and I came back and took over, he was kind of supportive in the beginning and stuff like that. But I really haven't had much contact with him in recent years, except, when he was subbing at Mainland, stuff like that. But you think about, high school coaches, not many of them stick around that long as a head coach. I mean, I'm going into my 15th season. Half the time he's been at it, and it seems like it's been forever overall. And that's a very long time to do it. And, and I think the thing that was great about him is, we had some great staffs, and the staffs changed. We had one staff in the 1990s that was tremendous. And, we won 3 in a row back then. And then a bunch of guys left for different things that were going on in their careers, one going to an AD job, one going into administration as a vice principal and so forth. And then the staff evolved, and we were able to bring in other people. And then next thing you know, we went on another run. And it was neat to be part of all that stuff and be, part of it for 21 years. And it really helped me grow and develop as a coach, and to what, I'm able to do now as a head coach and overseeing my staff. And, and I have a great staff, and it's not hard finding good. It's very hard to find good people at this level that can be there from 3 o'clock to 5:30, on the weekdays. Now a lot of people want to coach, but when they see the time and commitment you put in, they're out the door real fast. And, I'm fortunate to have a great staff this year. And I think one of the things, like taking from what I learned from Bob, was, to have that guiding hand, be that overseer, but, let the coaches coach. They're all experts in their own little niche that they have. And, you're a better coach overall, not to micromanage everything, but just to oversee it and just make sure things are going in the direction that you need it to go in.
I can only imagine if 15 years as a head coach has been a long time for you. Any plans of doubling that, matching his 3-decade total?
No, I'm too old.
Oh boy, 15 years, it's a long time. 30 years, he deserved it. So he'll be honored along with everybody else, all the distinguished football alum, on Friday night, 6 p.m. at the Corral as Cherokee comes into town. Both teams 2-1, big division matchup in the West Jersey Football League. Coach, appreciate your time tonight. Looking forward to the game on Friday. Hopefully it is another good one. We'll talk again next week.
Sounds good, Nick. I appreciate everything you and Matt do, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys.
Appreciate that, Coach. Chuck Smith Show right here on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Be sure to like and subscribe, and, of course, check out the game on Friday night right here on Cape Atlantic Live.